morning, friends. Welcome back to the Ancillary Physics 3 Electricity and Electronics class. And before going into today's topic, let's quickly recap what we have discussed yesterday. Yesterday we have discussed about the definitions of electricity and definitions of electronics, and we have defined what is charge and its properties, Coulomb's law, statement, electric field, and then electric flux. These are the things we have discussed. Let me quickly recollect that. So recap: electricity. Electricity is a branch of study that deals with the behavior of charges. It deals with the behavior of charges. Charge, it is a property. This charge will exert a line of forces from it. The direction of the line of forces will be outward if the charge is positive. The line of forces will be outward. If the charge is negative, the line of forces will be inward. And charge, it exerts the line of forces in all directions in all three Cartesian coordinates, that is in x, y, z. It exerts lines in all three dimensions, and these lines will not cross with each other. And there are two types of charges. One is positive charge, one is negative charge. Depending upon the type of the charges, these force lines, the direction will be determined. Now if we bring two such charges close together, if you bring like charges, that is plus plus or minus minus, they will repel each other. If you bring plus minus, they will attract. So like charges repel, unlike charges attract. These are about charges. If we study the behavior of these charges, when the charge is at rest, then it is called electrostatics. If the charge is on motion, charge is on moving, then it is called electrodynamics. So there are two types, two subcategory of electricity, which is electrostatics. Another one is electrodynamics. Electrodynamics in general is said to be current electricity. It is said to be current electricity as well. Now, if this electrodynamics theory is developed with the help of classical mechanics, then it is said to be classical electrodynamics. If we are using the quantum theory, then it is said to be quantum electrodynamics. So there are two cases of electrodynamics. One is classical electrodynamics, another one is quantum electrodynamics. So there are two types in this. One is classical, another one is quantum. Fine. So this is about the definitions of electricity. Well, what is electronics? Here electronics is also the study of charges, but under what condition? We study the behavior of charges in the electronic components. See, for example, if you consider resistor, capacitor, inductor, op-amp, FET, like electronic components, semiconductive components if we have, then if you study the behavior of electrons in that components, then that constitutes the field of electronics. Okay, so this is the definitions that we have discussed already. We have defined Coulomb's law under a condition where there are two two charges Q1 and Q2, which is separate with the distance r. Here Q1 and Q2 are the 2 point charges. We define the Coulomb's law regardless of the types of the charges present in this 2 point. The charges may be plus or minus. The force F acting on this point or this point. The force at charge Q1 due to the charge Q2, or the force at Q2 due to the point charge Q1, that we can write in the form of the equation 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by r square. This is Coulomb's law. What we infer from that? The force will increase if the amount of charge on either side increases. If you increase the charge Q, it will increase the force. If you increase the charge Q2, in that case also this force will increase in an equal proportion. If you increase the 1 unit of charge, then the force will increase 1 unit. But if you increase the distance, that is if you increase r, what will happen? This distance r has the inverse square relation with the force, so that if you increase the r, the force will decrease. So this is what Coulomb's law. Here we said epsilon naught is the permittivity of the free space. Epsilon naught is the permittivity of the free space. What do you mean by permittivity? Permittivity is nothing but the ability of that particular medium to allow the electric field pass into it. If we consider vacuum, then the vacuum's ability to allow the electric field to pass into it. For vacuum, we denote epsilon naught. If we calculate the permittivity of the air, then it is said to be epsilon r. In that way, you can define the permittivity for different mediums. The value will be different. The permittivity of the free space and the permittivity of the air will be more or less equal. This is all about Coulomb's law, and it has the value 8.854 into 10 power minus 12 Coulomb Newton inverse meter power minus 2, or you can say that Fermi per meter is unit. Then another topic that we have covered in the last lecture is electric field. What is electric field? We have defined the electric field with an analogy of fire. Assume that if there is a fire in a particular point, from that point for a finite distance we can experience the hotness. Similarly, if there is a charge at a particular point, for a finite area we will experience the force lines that exerted from this charge. And so within this area we can define electric field E. It is a vector Y because this field lines will be outward if the charge is positive, the field lines will be inward if the charge is negative, so that it is directional component. So we have the vector E, and it is defined as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square. What does it mean? Here also the electric field. The electric field, assume that there is a charge q here. If I am measuring the electric field at any point in the region where you can experience the force lines from this charge, now this electric field, it depends on the amount of charge present here. If the charge is high, then the field will be high. If the charge is low, the field will be low. But if you go away from the charge, then the field will decrease. In what proportion? As like in the Coulomb's law, it has the inverse square proportion with the distance. This is what for electric field. Then other topic that we have covered is electric flux pi. What is that? We have considered electric field lines. We said that it is non-uniform, and we have considered a plane into it, right? In that, right? Now what is the flux? Flux is nothing but number of lines passing through the surface. Flux, electric flux is nothing but it is the total number of electric field lines which is passing through a particular surface. So that we have defined as phi, which is equal to E dot ds, right? So this is flux. Up to this point we have discussed yesterday. And what we are going to discuss today? And today we will define what is Gauss law, explanation for that, proof for that. Then we will see one application of Gauss law. So this is what we plan to discuss in the today's class. So let's see what is Gauss law. Actually, Gauss law again deals with the electric flux. According to Gauss law, the electric flux is defined as, which is equal to Q by epsilon r. This is the Gauss law. What is the statement? The statement for this is the electric flux phi of the electric field E over any closed surface is equal to the 1 by epsilon naught times the net charge Q. The net charge Q enclosed by the closed circle. So this is what Gauss law. Gauss law is nothing but the electric flux phi of the electric field E. See, assume that if there is a closed circle, closed surface within which there is a charge Q. This charge Q will create an electric field, and now due to that electric field you can define electric flux as number of lines passing through a particular surface. That electric flux of this given element, the electric flux of the field created by this charge is equal to, right, 1 by epsilon naught times the net charge Q of the closed surface. That is what this statement tells. When you are asked to write, you have to write this statement, then this equation. This Gauss law. What is the explanation for that? Let us consider a closed surface. Let us denote the surface is S. Now the surface may be regular or irregular. The surface may be of regular type or irregular type. Regular means you can have a circle or you can have any other regular shape. Irregular means it's like if you take a stone or something, so its surface will be irregular shape. Okay? Let us consider one such surface, and this surface S is said to be Gaussian. It is said to be Gaussian surface. This S is said to be Gaussian. Now assume that there is a charge inside it, a charge which is located inside it. According to this statement, right, if there is a charge, then it will exert electric field. If there is a charge here, it will exert electric field in all directions. Now we consider, right, the surface area. Say for example, we have defined in the electric plus case, we defined one small area, then we have expanded it for the entire area for finding flux. So if here there is a surface, assume that there is a ball, right? If there is a ball which is sphere, you put a surface in the middle, so that from that middle, assume that there is a positive charge, all the electric field lines, that is the force lines which is coming out of the charge will be going outward, it all comes out from the surface, right? Now this, right, this lines once cuts the surface, if you count the number of lines on the surface, that is nothing but the flux, right? That flux pi, what they are telling that flux pi, which depends only on the charges inside the sphere, depends only on the charges inside the sphere. Suppose if there is a charge which is outside, then that will not contribute. So charges outside will not contribute for the electric field. It will not contribute. Let's put not equal to. It will not contribute to the flux over the surface. So if I am calculating the flux in the surface, if it is a surface, there is a charge in the middle, then this charge only contribute for the flux when I calculating on the top. If there is another charge here, then it will not contribute for the flux over this surface. This is one point. And another thing, the charge is located in the middle. That is what we have told. What happens if the charge is located somewhere apart from middle? It doesn't matter. So the presence of the charge inside the surface, which is important, rather position, right? The position is not important. Irrespective of position of the charge inside the closed surface, the thing is it should present inside, but it can sit anywhere inside the surface, but it should not present outside, right? That is the idea. If that is the case, then this equation holds true, where here this epsilon naught we have already told it is the permittivity of the free space, which has the value 8.854 into 10 power minus 12 Coulomb Newton inverse meter power minus 2. Suppose if there are multiple charge within this area, right, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 and so on, there are Q1 charges instead of single point charge. Assume that there are n number of point charges which is within this closed surface. In that case, how these equations can be written, because we have defined it for single charge, what we have to do is we have to write phi 1 out of this Q1, that you can write Q1 by epsilon naught. Similarly for phi 2, which is Q2 by epsilon naught, and so on, you can write this is phi 2 5n, which is equal to Qn by epsilon naught. You can individually write the flux for each point charges present within the closed circle, and you can take an algebraic sum. Superposition principle applies here, so that you can write pi I, which is equal to, or you can say simply the net charge pi, which is equal to 1 by epsilon naught, summation of all Q1, Q2 and so on Q1. Now you can write this using summation where I runs from 1 to n Qi. If there are 4 charges, you can write 1 by epsilon naught Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. If there are n charges, you can make an algebraic sum for n. So this is for, so this Gauss law is even holds true when the number of particles is greater than 1. If there are multiple number of particles which is present within the enclosed circle, in that case also Gauss law holds true. Okay. This is about the explanation of Gauss law. How to prove that? Yes sir, you have given a statement, you have given explanation, okay, you have given a mathematical statement. How did you obtain that? How do I believe? What is the proof for that? Do you have any mathematical explanation for that? Yes, there is a mathematical explanation. That is what we are going to see next. Okay, what is the consideration? We are going to have a consideration, right? We will consider enclosed circle, and now we place, right? Now we place a charge Q within this enclosed circle, and we place in other case charge Q out of the closed circle. We are going to see the equation for phi, and that will serve as a proof for that. Now, so let's see the proof for Gauss law. Let us have this equation Q by epsilon naught. So before going to see the proof, let us understand one thing. Solid angle. What is solid angle? That we must understand clearly, because this concept of solid angle is going to be used in the proof. Don't worry, proof has only 3-4 steps of mathematical equations, but you have to understand what is solid angle. See, let's draw a circle, right? Does it look like a circle? Fine, assume that this is a circle, right? This is the center O, okay? It's the center O. Then, if we draw a line from the center to its surface, it is said to be radius. Okay. Now, if you draw another line, this is also radius. This is already known. Now there is a curve right here. What is that? What is that curve? It is said to be L. Right? So here R is said to be radius. L is said to be, this one is called arc length. Right? It looks like an arc, right? So it is called arc and length. Now, you see, the angle between these two lines is said to be theta. This theta you can define arc length by radius. Okay? So theta you can write arc length by radius, L by R. Unit of this theta is called radians. Okay? Probably you might know this already. If you consider a circle, circle is a two-dimensional face. This is the two-dimensional face. You can draw a circle. Okay? You can define angle between two radius lines theta, that is nothing but the ratio between the arc length divided by the radius. Its unit is radians. Fine. Now, if I take the complete circle, what is the theta will be? Theta will be nothing but 2 pi. So if you have a complete circle, then if you consider a complete arc length, total length, that is what? Circumference. Circumference of the circle divided by the radius, that will give you 2 pi. How? You just say what is the formula for circumference? 2 pi r, and divided by radius, it becomes 2 pi. So if you go for a complete circle, then it will take 2 pi radians. This is clear, right? Now you expand the same concept for a 3 dimension, right? Let's take a football, or you can take an apple. Assume that apple is on sphere, right? Actually it's not sphere, and if you cut a portion out of it, right? Or let me try to visualize with another example. So assume that this is a sphere. I have drawn it as a circle. How would you say that this is a sphere? You see, if I draw the diagram like this, you can say that this is a sphere, right? So if it is a sphere, if I cut in the middle, right, it will become 2 slices, right? So from this midpoint to here, at midpoint somewhere, if you draw this, you can get a slice. You can take slice, right? It's like you can take a part of piece from the watermelon, or you can consider a piece from apple, or I can come with another example. Assume that you have taken out a cone shape from a football, right? Assume that this is a football. Let me take out a cone shape. Let me cut a cone shape out of it, right? You consider a cone is. How it will look like? So a cone will look like. Okay? But the only thing you have to assume is the top in the cone is flat. Hollow actually. There is no, but you have considered it is filled, right? But filled with this curved shape. There is a curved shape, no? It's like here it is filled. Assume that this cone shape is also filled. The surface is on par with the football. If you insert the cone into a football, it fits. Assume that. Now, here also from center to outer point, this is radius, right? But it is not two-dimensional because here, if you consider a cone, it is three-dimensional. It goes like this. So if you consider here, it will have a three-dimensional shape. Here also. Now this is radius. Okay, and this you cannot say arc length because it is area now. So this is surface area. Surface area of the cone. This side is r. Now this is no longer a simple theta, rather it has a circle. So this you can define omega. This you can define omega. It is called solid angle. And this omega is called a solid angle. That is a three-dimensional expansion of theta. Theta is for two dimension, solid angle is for three dimension. Now you can define this omega. For a small portion you can define d omega. Similarly, for a small portion you can define d theta. For an entire thing you can say d theta if you want a clear differentiation. So d omega, that you can define, if this area is ds, you can define this as ds by r square. Okay, ds by r square. ds means the small area. Okay, let me expand this for the entire surface area. What will happen? That will give you omega. For entire surface area means s by r square. For a sphere, what is the formula for entire surface area? It is 4 pi r square by r square. If you cancel this, you will get the solid angle omega as 4 pi if you consider the entire football or the entire sphere, right? This is called solid angle. In a simple nutshell, it is that three-dimensional expansion of the theta in two dimension. The unit for this is steradian. Okay, we are going to use this cone concept in this upcoming derivation. So once you understand the concept of solid angle, you may not ask to write answers in this, but you have to understand. Now let's move to the proof. Okay, proof case 1. Let us consider the case charge q inside a closed sphere. Why we take this case? Because while defining or explaining the Gauss law we said only the charges within the sphere contribute for this. The charge outside the sphere is not contributing. We need a justification, right? So that we consider two cases. One is the charges inside the sphere, another one is the charges outside the sphere. In the first case, charge inside the sphere. For that, let us draw a sphere, accept that it's a sphere, and the charge q is located at the origin O. Let us say this is positive charge. Positive charge means then the line of force will going outward. Now in this sphere, let us consider a small surface. Okay, small surface we will consider, and you see you can say that this line of force is going into this. It's going through this surface. This surface we will define ds. Okay, and these are the field component, that is due to the force exerted from this force lines coming out from this charge. Now Let us draw a normal from this surface. If we draw a normal from this surface, this, you can say ds vector, right? This is, you can say, ds vector. Ds is the normal component which is drawn from this small surface. Now we have an angle between this component, electric field component, and the normal component of the surface, that is theta, right? Now for this case you can write the expression for electric field E, that you can write 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square, that we have already studied. Just keep remember. Now you can write the equation for flux at this small area ds. So if it is a small area ds, then you can define flux, so d phi, which is nothing but E dot ds. Okay, you can define E dot ds. This you can write E ds cos theta. How did you write this expression? If you don't remember, go back to the previous lecture where you can find how this cos theta comes with the aid of trigonometry. You can see this in the title, electric flux. Okay, so you can write E ds cos theta. But what is the expression for E? You can write 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square. This is E, and ds cos theta, right? Now you can rewrite this equation like this. How? You can rewrite this equation for 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. This you can write q by 4 pi epsilon naught into ds cos theta by r square. You just come here. ds by r square is equal to d omega, that is we defined as solid angle. See, we said this surface is fixed with the sphere. Suppose if it is not fixed, so this is the surface that is in line with the sphere, but we have considered a surface which is somewhat different from the surface of the sphere. Let's have this surface is inclined like this. Instead of this, let us have a surface like this. Now we can define an angle theta that can be drawn between these two normals. If you draw such angle theta, then this equation can become d omega, that is equal to ds cos theta by r square. Obtain the cos theta, you can use the same argument that we have used for defining electric flux. Okay, this d omega becomes ds by r square cos theta when the surface has the different orientation than the usual. That is the case here. Here we consider a surface which is, the surface is not perpendicular to the electric field. It is somehow inclined with an angle theta. In that case, we can obtain this equation. Now you can replace this with solid angle. Now you can replace this term with solid angle. So it becomes d phi q by 4 pi epsilon naught. Solid angle becomes d omega. Okay. Now this is for small area. If you consider the entire area, then you will get the total flux over this sphere. That is, for that you have to take the integral on either side. So this side it becomes phi, and this side, for the entire sphere, what we said, solid angle will be 4 pi. So q by 4 pi epsilon naught multiplied by 4 pi. Because integral of d omega becomes omega, omega is equal to 4 pi. Now what will happen? This 4 pi and this 4 pi will cancel out each other. So we have pi is equal to Q by epsilon naught. So the flux which is observed on the surface of a closed Gaussian surface, that is equal to the product of 1 by epsilon naught times the charge enclosed by the circle. That is what we have written for Gauss law. Hence, Gauss law is true for the case where the charge Q is inside the closed sphere. Partially we have proved. Another statement what we said, it is true only when the charge is within the sphere. If the charge is outside the sphere, that will not contribute to the flux over the surface. That is what we have proved. What is the proof for that? For the charge within the charge Q within the sphere, we have proved here. Now let us consider another case where we place this charge outside of the sphere. Let us try to write the equation and let's see how it evolves, the equations. Now let's see the second case. What is that? Second case where the charge Q is located outside the closed sphere. What is that? Let's have a closed surface. Okay. Now let's have a charge plus Q here. If we draw this electric field lines, it will go like this. We can consider an area here. We can also consider a small surface area here. Let us define this as ds1 and this as ds2. These are electric field lines. Okay. Now, at this surface, you can define the flux d phi as, see here, due to this positive charge in this surface, the lines are going into it. For this surface, if you let's consider a football, and you are throw a needle from one side to other side. You are injecting in it. One side it is going towards, other side it is coming out. In that case, here electric field lines are inward. For ds1, the lines are inward. In this case, the electric field lines are inward. What happens here? In the opposite side, it comes out from there. So that here the electric field lines are outward. You put plus symbol for inward, you put minus symbol for outward. So if you write d phi, let's write d phi 1, you can write plus q by 4 pi epsilon naught r square, right? So this, 4 pi epsilon naught, if you write, in terms of d omega, you can write q by 4 pi epsilon naught d omega, if you write in terms of solid angle. This is for this case, first case. If you write it for second case, d phi 2 at this surface, it is outward, so you can write minus q by 4 pi epsilon naught d omega. If you make a sum, what will happen? If you want a total flux over the surface, this will cancel out each other, right? So this plus, this minus, so d phi 1 plus d phi 2, which is equal to 0. So assume that wherever you consider surface, suppose if you are considering a charge is here, then you can draw a line like this. So there is a surface here and there is a surface here. In this surface, the electric field lines are inward, here it is outward. So anywhere you can consider two pair of surfaces on either side. One side this electric field lines are inward, other side the electric field lines are outward. Both will mutually cancel each other. So the net flux over the surface becomes 0 when you put the charge outside. If the net flux 0 means the charge outside the sphere does not contribute for the flux over the surface. Hence, the Gauss law is proved for two cases. Fine. So this is all about the proof. Okay. Let us have the application of Gauss law tomorrow. But before winding up today's session, let us have one more step ahead that will be used in this application. That is, we have phi which is equal to q by epsilon naught versus Gauss law. Let's have its another form, differential form. Let's have a differential form of Gauss law. Okay guys, now the differential form of Gauss law. So in order to obtain this, we must understand what is Gauss divergence theorem. Okay, according to Gauss divergence theorem, what it is, the divergence theorem states that the surface integral of a vector field over a closed surface. Surface integral of a vector field. What is that in our case? In the surface, what we have identified, if you take the total number of electric field lines coming out of a closed surface, it is nothing but flux, right? So the surface integral of a vector field over a closed surface, that is in our case, which is called the flux through the surface. Okay, it is equal to the volume integral of the divergence over the region inside the surface. So we are having surface integral phi, which is equal to surface integral of E dot ds. That is what we usually write. This you can replace with a volume integral of the quantity. What is that here? Electric field lines. Its divergence. You have to take the divergence of electric field line, then you take an volume integral. Now this and this are equal. Instead of taking a surface integral for the electric field lines, first you can take a divergence of the electric field lines, then you can take an volume integral. So this relation is given through Gauss divergence theorem. The statement is surface integral of E dot ds equal to volume integral of del dot E dv. This is called, this del is divergence. What is the meaning of it? We are taking partial derivative for E with respect to x, y, z. So del, which is equal to dou by dou x plus dou by dou y plus dou by dou z. We just remember this relation which we are going to utilize to obtain differential form of Gauss law. When the differential form of Gauss law occurs, initially while defining Gauss law, what we said, we put a point charge within the closed surface. Now let us consider a closed surface whose volume is V. Now within this, not a point, throughout this the charge is uniformly distributed. So charge is present everywhere, and that net charge is Q. Okay, assume that case. There is a uniform charge distribution throughout the sphere of volume V, and the net charge, let us assume capital Q. Okay, now if you assume a small volume within this, let us consider a small volume within this. Now within this small volume, this is dV, right? Within the small volume you can say dV. It's say unit volume. Let's say unit volume. Within that we can define rho. We can say rho is a charge density, that is nothing but the number of charges present in a unit volume. Number of charges present in a unit volume. If this is the case, then how to calculate the net charge within the sphere? You can write net charge is nothing but the charge density, that is the number of charges in this unit volume. You expand it to the entire volume, so that you can take the integral over entire volume. This will give you the total charge within this sphere. Fine. Now from the equation for flux, you can write surface integral of E dot ds, right? And you can connect this with Gauss law, right? You can connect this with Gauss law. that you can actually Gauss law is phi is equal to q by epsilon. You can take the definitions of flux, so that you can write instead of phi, left side you can write surface integral of E dot ds, which is equal to q by epsilon. I have replaced small q with capital Q. Why? Because capital Q is the total charge within this sphere. Here the charge is uniformly distributed, not a point charge. So in order to differentiate that, we have used capital Q, right? This. Now we can compare equation 1 and equation 2. How we can compare? We can bring this epsilon naught left side. So you can write q is equal to epsilon naught integral of E dot ds. Compare this q and this q are equal, so that you can write epsilon naught integral of E dot ds, which is equal to integral of rho dv, integral of rho dv, or you can write integral of E dot ds, which is equal to 1 by epsilon naught rho dv. This is equation number 3. Now use this according to Gauss divergence theorem. So according to Gauss divergence theorem, you can write this term, integral of E dot ds is equal to volume integral of del dot E into dv. So now you can write this as equation number 4. Now you can consider equation number 3 and the equation number 4. What is that? In both cases, left hand side are equal. So you can compare right hand side. What is that? 1 by epsilon naught integral of rho dv, which is equal to del dot E into dv. So what you can write? This you can write rho by epsilon naught dv, which is equal to v del dot E dv. Now, what are the terms within the integral? Here this is surface integral, here this is volume integral. What are the terms inside? If you compare, del dot E becomes rho by epsilon naught. Okay? So now you are having del dot E vector, which is rho by epsilon naught. So del is differential component, right? You can write dou by dou x plus dou by dou y plus dou by dou z of E vector, which is equal to rho by epsilon naught. So this is the differential form of Gauss law. Here this differentiation is not ordinary differential equation, it is a partial differential equation. Why? This dependent variable E has 3 independent variables, x, y and z. How did you obtain? You have considered a sphere with the charge uniformly distributed. We said the volume of the sphere is V and the total charge is Q, and the charge density is number of charges per unit volume in a small volume. We have started from this point. So with this, if you write the equation for Q, you have to take the integral of the charge density within a small volume for a whole, so that Q equal to delta rho dv. Then from the aid of the definitions of electric flux and Gauss law, you can write this equation. For this equation, you can go back and refer, and we have compared this equation with this equation, end up with integral of E dot ds equal to 1 by epsilon naught rho dv. Then we have written the statement of Gauss divergence law. We have compared these two equations, end up with the differential form of Gauss law. This term will be used for the some of the applications of Gauss law that we are going to discuss in the next lecture. So fine, let us stop here, and today we had a recap of what we have discussed yesterday, and we have discussed what is Gauss law, its explanation. We have seen the proof for 2 cases, and we have deduced the differential form of Gauss law here. Let us stop here. We will continue the application of Gauss law in the next lecture. Thank you. Bye.